T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Chris, this shit's fun.
T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Chris, this shit's fun.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of JT Sports Live. I'm your host, JT. We are only 42 hours away from the official start of the 2024 college football season. And with this being week one, a lot of you guys have been asking me, JT, we need some more gambling content on the channel. We know you be throwing money down on these games. So this is going to be the debut of my best bets. I'm going to be doing these every week. NFL, college football, and I'm going to give you my 5 locks for week one of this college football season. We're also going to break down a couple of the marquee matchups being played in week one. Clemson, they are a 13.5-point underdog against Georgia. Are the Bulldogs going to take the Tigers to the dog pound? A lot of Gator fans have been coming at me in the comment section saying that I'm giving Mario Cristobal too much credit. He's not that good of a coach. And I'm not disagreeing with you guys on that. But where I get a little bit confused is how you Florida fans are making it seem like Billy Napier is better than Mario Cristobal when he's 2 times worse. So we got to touch on the faith that Florida fans have in Sunbelt Billy. USC, they went from a 7-point underdog to now being a 4.5-point dog going into their game against LSU. ESPN's FPI gives LSU a 55% chance to beat the Trojans, and I think that USC could give LSU a rude awakening in this game. On the NFL side of things, You guys already know that I'm rocking with the Panthers to win the NFC South. A lot of y'all are taking the Falcons. And I want to break down why I trust Carolina more than I trust Atlanta. How good are the Jaguars going to be this year? This was a team that around this time last year, a lot of people thought they could be a dark horse Super Bowl contender. They started out strong during the first half of 2023, and things unraveled for them in the second half. They ended up missing out on the playoffs. Could they bounce back this year, or could we see another of the same story from what we saw out of them in the previous season? Steeler fans refuse to accept the truth about Russell Wilson. This dude is washed, and yet there's a good majority of folks out there that still think that there's some juice left from the glory days of the Seattle Seahawks Russell Wilson that we grew up to watch. But man, I just got to tell you guys the truth about this, man. It's over for him. If he gets the nod to be the starter at QB for Pittsburgh, they're going to be terrible. And the Cardinals, how good are they going to be this year? For them to have a winning season, they need Kyler Murray to put his cape on, and he needs to become Superman, because it's hard for me to see the Cardinals having anywhere close to the small amount of success they had last season. Before we dive into it all, shout out to everybody that's tuned in, wherever you're watching, YouTube, X. Make sure that you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications, retweet the stream so you can give your team some good luck going into this year. Remember that we aren't just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast. You can find this episode and all of our previous ones in audio format on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. If you have a question that you would like answered on a future episode, you can submit your mailbag questions in the DMs on X at JT_Sports_ and on Instagram at JT_Sports_. Before we dive into it all, here's a quick word from our sponsor. In football, we all know that no quarterback can win without good protection up front. It's also important that you protect yourself from data brokers who sell your personal information online, to scammers, spammers, and anybody else who may want to target you. That's why you should use Aura, today's sponsor of this episode. Aura shows which data brokers are passing away your information on the internet and automatically submits opt-out requests on your behalf. Go to aura.com/JTsports in description or pin comment down below to get a 14-day free trial and protect your personal information from being exposed online. Cleaning up your information online not only helps reduce the amount of spam you receive, but it also protects you from hackers who could use this info to help gain access into your social media accounts, bank accounts, or other sensitive information. Go to our sponsor, aura.com/JTsports in description or pin comment down below to gain access to your 14-day free trial and protect yourself from hackers looking to gain access into your sensitive information online. All right, everybody, let's get into it. The first order of business that we got to handle. Clemson is a... What's going on? Okay, all right. My fault, guys. Technical difficulties. All right. First order of business that we got to handle. Clemson is a 13.5-point dog going into their week 1 opener against the Georgia Bulldogs. And the last time these two teams faced off against each other a couple of years ago, Georgia won 10-3 in an all-out dogfight. And going into this year's matchup, is Clemson going to get taken to the dog pound by Georgia? Georgia is the unanimous best team entering this season. They got a great defense. They got a stacked offense. Carson Beck is regarded by most to be the best quarterback in college football. And when you think about Clemson, this is a prove-it year for them. Are they still an elite program? Dabo Swinney, much has been made about his stubbornness towards utilizing the transfer portal, and he's relying solely on recruiting and player development. And we know that Clemson is going to have a good defense this year. No matter who they lose, they always do a really good job at reloading on that side of the football. And my question with Clemson in this game doesn't lie with, can they slow down Georgia's offense? Their defense is more than capable of being able to get Georgia's offense off the field. The big key for Clemson being able to make this a competitive game is going to come down to how improved is this offense going to be year 2 under offensive coordinator Garrett Riley. Last year, they made some strides in the right direction, but Cade Klubnik was still mildly inconsistent. You didn't get good wide receiving play, and your offensive line still struggled to protect Cade Klubnik as well. Well, this year, Clemson's offense could take a massive leap. And if Clemson gets productive offense in this game, this is going to turn into a war between these two teams. Georgia, although they do have the talent advantage, let's not make it seem like Dabo Swinney is just some scrub as a head coach. He's going to have this team ready to play. They're going to be amped up. They're going to be motivated. I always felt like Dabo Swinney at his best is when he's able to dig into that underdog role. Remember before Clemson became a national name, he always had the advantage of being able to say, everybody's doubting us, nobody is giving us a chance, we're the David, and everybody that we're playing up against is Goliath. Well, he can get back into that bag in this game. Not too many people believe that Clemson has a shot at winning this thing, but I believe that they have a good chance of being able to pull off the upset. If you can get productive play out of your offense, you finally have good receivers again. You got Tyler Brown, who returns. He was your leading receiver from last year. And you got two outstanding true freshman wideouts in Brian Westcott, TJ Moore. Expect those two guys to have significant roles in this game. And your offensive line issues should finally be solved with the hiring of the new offensive line coach that you brought in from Georgia. Clemson's offense, I believe, is going to be good enough against Georgia to put points up in this game. And with them already having a good defense, they're going to make this a dogfight. I would be extremely surprised if Georgia goes into this game and they just spit in Clemson's face and they just put their feet all over their faces and rub their heads into the dirt, because Clemson, this is probably the best team that they've had since we last saw them in the college football playoffs. You should see Cade Klubnik take that next step in development with him having a second year of Garrett Riley's offense. And Garrett Riley, remember, this was the main reason why TCU went to the national championship not too long ago, because he was their offensive coordinator. He won the Jim Broyles Award that year, which goes to college football's best assistant coach. And when he got hired by Clemson, he left TCU to take this offensive coordinator job. It was assumed by most, myself included, that he wasn't going to be around long until he ends up getting a head coaching job. So I expect Garrett Riley's offense to play a major role in Clemson being able to cover this 13.5 point spread. I really believe in Dabo Swinney. I don't think that he's gotten worse as a head coach. It's just that he has this certain philosophy that with the new age of college football now, it's kind of viewed as outdated. But we don't know that for sure. This season is going to verify just if the game has passed Dabo Swinney by, and you got to be able to utilize the portal if you want to be able to be a championship team. But I'm not going to write off Dabo Swinney just because it's presumed that his way doesn't work anymore. This game is going to define how the rest of this year goes for Clemson. They don't need to win this game, but they do need to keep this close and competitive, because if they can't, How can I trust you to beat Miami? How can I trust you to beat Virginia Tech? If Virginia Tech ends up being good and you got to go on the road to Blacksburg to play an undefeated VT team, it's hard for me to see you winning that game. If Clemson still is an elite program, this is going to be the game that shows us that they are good enough that they should be able to keep this game within 10 points. You know that with Georgia, you don't have a lot of room for error. But you do have a defense that is good enough to maybe keep Georgia to only 10 points at halftime. But if your offense doesn't end up showing up and you have the same outcome on that side of the ball that you've gotten the last couple of years, no matter how good your defense plays, they can only do so much until Georgia starts to wear them out and they start to take them to Pound Town. A good benefit that Clemson has in this ball game is that Georgia's going to be down one of their top running backs, but you still do have Trevor Etienne, who's one of the better running backs in college football. But Georgia isn't incredibly deep at wide receiver. This is a team that, from a talent standpoint on paper, they look like they should clobber Clemson. But when this game actually gets played, you're going to see a Clemson team that, with an improved offense, they're going to be able to make this a close game. And if we're going into the last 5 minutes in the fourth quarter and Clemson is down only by 7 points, that's automatically a win, in my opinion, for Clemson, because you were able to make this a competitive enough game that you put yourself in striking distance of maybe being able to pull off a big play or two that can lead you to the upset. Georgia recruits better than any program in America. They've out-recruited Clemson. But the gap between Georgia and Clemson is not as huge as what you may think. Georgia's right here. Clemson's a couple notches below that. There's enough talent in place, along with the coaching staff that Dabo Swinney has assembled, for Clemson to have the stars perfectly aligned to make this a potential upset. It's week 1 of the 2024 college football season, and we've already seen a good amount of chaos already. Florida State going down to Georgia Tech, and many folks believe this year could be a lot similar to what we saw in 2007 when it was madness every week. This is a neutral site setting. It's being played in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but it pretty much is a de facto home game for Georgia because Atlanta is not too far away from Athens. But Clemson is no stranger to playing in these big-time games and these hostile environments. They came really close to beating Florida State last year. A lot of us forget that. And there were a couple of losses that they had that they just came up short in the big moments. This is a team with the experience that they now have on offense. They know how to close out games. If this ends up being a one-possession game going into the fourth quarter, I love Clemson's chances of being able to walk away with the upset. I really do. And I really believe that Georgia, despite how good they are, Clemson is probably one of those teams that people have written off, but with the fact that they've done a good job of recruiting and developing talent on defense, you would expect that to eventually carry over to the offense. And this is the most confidence that I've had in Clemson's offense since they had Trevor Lawrence. I see Clemson losing this thing 30-27 is my final score prediction, but I do believe that Clemson has enough to make this a competitive game and potentially pull off the upset. I don't think that they're going to get dog walked by Georgia like how Vegas and ESPN's FPI may indicate. The next game I want to talk about, well, we're going to save Florida. I want to touch on USC-LSU. USC and LSU is the game that I've been the most excited to watch week 1 of this college football season, all off season, because both of these teams are closer than what a lot of you guys may think. LSU started out a few weeks ago as a 7.5-point favorite, but that line has now dropped to them only being favored by 4.5 points. The gap between USC and LSU, there isn't any. There are way more similarities between these two squads than what the national media is telling you guys about. They both are going to be unveiling new quarterbacks. Miller Moss for USC, who was going off in their bowl game, and you got Gunnar Nussmeier. While although he's gotten some significant playing time before, he was going off against Georgia in the SEC championship like 2 years ago when Jaden Daniels got injured in that game. And it doesn't matter if Georgia's defense was playing prevent. They didn't want to give up a lot of big plays. It's hard to have success against Georgia's defense, especially during that time when they were having two of college football's historically great defenses from 2021 to 2022. So Gunnar Nussmeier has put enough on film that you can trust him to give you high-level quarterback play. Miller Moss, you more so trust him off the face of him being coached by Lincoln Riley, who is the walking quarterback guru. He is QBU. And I've been pleasantly surprised with the concerns that have surrounded USC's offense. USC's coming off the worst season under Lincoln Riley, which, by the way, is his worst coaching season ever. And yet we now are starting to question Lincoln Riley's knowledge of offense. USC is going to score points offensively. That shouldn't be a question. The wide receiver position is just as good as LSU's. They have nothing but top 100 guys or better who are projected to start for them at wideout. A lot of y'all don't know about Zachariah Branch, but you're about to find out about him after this game. He's like Tavon Austin meets DeAnthony Thomas at wide receiver. He's arguably the fastest wideout in college football. His speed rivals Tyreek Hill. He's dynamic with the ball in his hands. LSU's biggest question is the same that LSU's biggest question in this game is the same exact question that USC has. Whose defense is going to be the most improved? They both have new coaching staffs led by new defensive coordinators that are highly respected, really good. Blake Baker did a phenomenal job during his time being the defensive coordinator for Missouri. Dan Lynn, in only 1 year coaching UCLA's defense, he took them from being one of the worst in college football to being a top 15 unit last year. And if you can improve UCLA's defense in the span of one offseason, you mean to tell me that you can't do the same for USC, who has slightly better talent than what UCLA had on that side of football? I think that where the misconception is in this game is the sentiment that LSU is more talented than USC on defense, when I don't believe that to be the case in this game. USC up front, you can make the argument that they're better than LSU on the interior of their defensive line. LSU doesn't have a Bear Alexander, and they also don't have the talent at edge that USC possesses. What LSU does have over USC defensively is that they got the best player on defense in this game in Harold Perkins. Now, he had a down season last year, but I still view him to be a potential top 10 pick in next year's draft class. And with Blake Baker taking over as defensive coordinator, he should put Harold Perkins in spots that should be able to maximize his talent and his potential, because at one point, we could make the argument that around this time last year, Harold Perkins could have not only been the best player in defense and on defense in college football, but maybe he could be a potential Heisman candidate for being on defense, which is something that's very rare. He was one of the best players in college football at one point, and last year things just kind of went awry. But this year, with a better defensive staff, Harold Perkins is going to have a big imprint on this game for LSU. Now, where LSU has the big advantages over USC for this matchup is their offensive line. They got a top 10 O-line in college football this year. They do have a slightly more talented defense based off recruiting, but I don't really know how much that means in terms of their ability to slow down USC's offense when you're going up against the best offensive mind in the sport in Lincoln Riley. And a lot of the guys that you have on this defense played last year, but last year was the worst defense that LSU had in their program history. So even though you got a good amount of experience on that side of football, you know, not all experience is good experience when you're coming off that bad of a defensive performance. With USC, you can say the same thing about them. But they do have players on their defensive line that can get after Gunnar Nussmeier. And they did put a lot of emphasis this offseason on getting more physical, getting more strength. They've been going hard in the weight room. Their defensive line has gained a combined total of 340 pounds from the work they've been putting in the weight room. And for the guys that haven't been able to meet the required weight gain threshold, they've been penalized. They had to do extra workouts in practice. They had to drag sleds around. Lincoln Riley and Deanna Lynn, they are going to be a really good partnership. Because if you can turn around UCLA's defense in the span of one season, I don't see how you can at least turn USC's defense into a top 50, top 60 unit. And that's really all you need with how good your offense is going to be. I know the same can also be said for LSU. They got Kyron Lacey, one of the better returning wide receivers in the nation. You also recruit really well at that position. We know that LSU is wide receiver U, but right now I still think that there are more similarities than what people initially think about this game. On paper, you see USC versus LSU, you think that, you know, the LSU logo, the SEC affiliation gives LSU the upper hand going into this game. But when you really dive in to the nuances of what USC has done to better prepare themselves for year one in the Big Ten, this is going to be a more physical team and a better coach team than what you saw out of them last year. A lot of the reasons for why their defense sucked last year wasn't mainly because of talent. It was more due to the fact that you had Alex Grinch, who didn't put a lot of emphasis on having big physical guys up front. He wanted his defensive players to be smaller and a lot faster so they can treat every play like the blitz. And what did that get them? They got blitzed every play. They couldn't stop the pass. They couldn't stop the run. But this year, right off the bat, when you see USC's defense walk on the field in this game, you're not going to recognize them. Everybody's going to be beefed up and jacked up. You're not going to see small, undersized linebackers running around anymore making plays. Everybody is going to be buffed up. They're going to be big, and they're going to be ready for the physicality that LSU is going to bring to them up front. LSU has a great offensive line. They definitely should have their way for most of this game, but I can see USC being able to get big stops in crucial moments of this matchup, and that's what this game is going to come down to. I don't think we're going to see either one of these defenses hold any of these offenses to under 24 points. This is going to be a game that's going to be decided in the fourth quarter by whose defense can come away with that big turnover late, or who can get that big sack on third or fourth down to get the ball back to their offense to cap off the win. Me, if I had to give you a prediction right now, give me USC 34-31. Lincoln Riley has a better record and top 25 games than what Brian Kelly does. And Brian Kelly isn't that good in week one openers. He lost his previous two to Florida State. Last year, they got absolutely took to the dog shed by Florida State. And I could see the same outcome kind of happening in this game. I think that LSU is going to be in for a rude awakening because I feel USC has been the most disrespected program in college football this offseason. You got people saying that Lincoln Riley doesn't know what he's doing down there. He can't get NIL right. He'll never get the defense right. There's been so many misconceptions about the Trojans this offseason that are going to get cleared up with how they're going to look against USC. And that's why I believe they're going to give LSU a rude awakening in this game. LSU is not the team that most of y'all think they are. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen LSU included in too many college football playoff predictions. I really am starting to see Brian Kelly more for being overrated than he is as one of the better coaches in college football, because every time we see him in games of this magnitude where he has to go on the road or it's in a neutral site setting, he oftentimes fails to deliver. So I love USC to cover, and I love them to win outright in this game. Let's talk about Florida for a second. Florida fans keep yelling at me that, JT, you're giving Mario Cristobal way too much credit going into this game. This is the same fool who didn't know how to take a knee against Georgia Tech. Listen, you don't have to yell at me about how big of a question mark Mario Cristobal is as a head coach. I understand that. But you sound like a hypocrite when you're going to criticize Mario Cristobal for the debacle against Georgia Tech, but you're not going to have that same energy for your head coach, who is the same dude who allowed 13 men to be on the field. You lost to Arkansas at home last year, but the Swamp is just so tough to win at. And plus, you lost to Vanderbilt a couple of years ago, because there were some of y'all who wanted to bring up the fact that Mid-Tennessee beat Miami a few years ago. Like, what the hell does what happened 3 years ago have any bearing on what's going to transpire in this game? Florida fans have way too much faith in Sunbelt Billy going into this game against Miami. What really puzzles me is how Florida fans just want to demean Mario Cristobal's resume. So it doesn't matter that he led Oregon to a Pac-12 championship. It doesn't matter that he's won a Rose Bowl. It doesn't matter that he took Oregon on the road to Columbus and took down Ohio State, who was the third-ranked team in college football at that time, with C.J. Stroud at quarterback. Let's not try to ignore Mario Cristobal's resume, because he's a better head coach than what Billy Napier is right now. I don't get why you Florida fans don't want to admit that for some reason, but look at his resume and Mario Cristobal's and compare it to Billy Napier. What is Billy Napier's signature win at this point? Upsetting Utah at home a few years ago with Anthony Richardson. That when you got up against Tennessee, cool. But Mario Cristobal's signature win is taking down Ohio State, who was the third-ranked team in the nation back in 2021 when he was at Oregon. He also has out-recruited Billy Napier. Every single year that Mario Cristobal has been in South Florida, Miami has had nothing less than a top 10 recruiting class year after year. Florida has yet to bring in a top 10 recruiting class under Billy Napier. I don't understand this overconfidence that Florida fans have in Billy Napier, that they think he's such a good coach that we just have to ignore Mario Cristobal accomplishing more than what Billy Napier has at this level. Billy Napier has done nothing at the P4 level. They didn't even make it into a bowl game last year. At least Miami had a winning record. I mean, there are so many things that I disagree with that Florida fans are bringing up because they know that they're at a disadvantage in this game. Miami has the better coaching staff than Florida. Our offensive coordinator, Shannon Dawson, is a better play caller than Billy Napier. Florida fans were going all at Billy Napier's throat last year, saying that he needs to hire an offensive coordinator. He needs to give up play calling duties. He hired the OC, but he's still calling the plays. So your offensive play calling issues are still there. I mean, defensively, Austin Armstrong's defense last year was an absolute disaster. Miami's new defensive coordinator that they hired from Marshall was responsible for them having one of college football's most efficient pass defenses. We got to stop making it seem like Mario Cristobal has more to prove in this game than what Billy Napier does, because it's the complete opposite. Billy Napier has the toughest schedule in college football. He's coaching for his job. Not only does losing this game make his hot seat even hotter, but you now have more pressure on you going into that game against UCF, because if you go 0-2 against two of the biggest in-state schools in Florida, you deserve to get fired at that point. That hurts recruiting, and it hurts the perception of Florida football. I'm sick and tired of Gator fans making it seem like Mario Cristobal is this scrub head coach who has accomplished nothing all his years being a head coach, but yet they just ignore him being a Pac-12 champion, a New Year's Six bowl winner, led Oregon to a Rose Bowl, has gotten numerous players that have played under him drafted in the first round, Penei Sewell, Justin Herbert, and they want to make it seem like him and Billy Napier are on even playing fields. Billy Napier is not a good head coach. He hasn't shown the ability to be a good head coach. Billy Napier's biggest accomplishments so far are winning the Sun Belt Conference. You mean to tell me that winning the Sun Belt trumps winning the Pac-12? I don't give a damn how weak the Pac-12 has been. You're not going to sit here and undermine what Mario Cristobal has done to try to gas up Billy Napier. I don't get how you Florida fans can point out all of the wrongs that Mario Cristobal has done, but just scoff over, the blunders that Billy Napier has. How do you have 13 men on the field? How does that happen? How do you lose to Vanderbilt? You can dig up as much nonsense about Billy Napier as you can about Mario Cristobal. I can go back and forth with you all day. But the truth is this. Come Saturday, August 31st, there's a Category 5 hurricane coming to Gainesville, Florida, and that hurricane is going to expose why Billy Napier is not cut out to be coaching in college football's toughest conference. You guys have way too much faith in the guy that has given you nothing to be faithful for. You have hopeful optimism. Miami has the better quarterback. They're deeper than you at running back, at receiver, and at nearly every single position. We got to stop making it seem like Mario Cristobal has everything to prove in this game. Both of these coaches can afford to lose this game. But if I had to tell you a coach who needs this win more, it really is Billy Napier. You don't have too many easy games on your schedule that you can look out and say, oh yeah, like Florida's definitely going to win that game. This game is going to define how both of these two seasons go, or how both of these team seasons go this year. If Miami wins, you're expected to win. You should be able to take care of business and win the ACC with how weak your schedule is this year. You don't play too many good teams this year. If Florida wins and Miami ends up being as good as what most people think they can be, then you feel confident that Florida can at least get the 6 wins. Because I got Florida at 5-7 because of them losing this Miami game potentially. But if you win this game, I can see you beating Kentucky, upsetting or beating UCF, and pulling off a couple of upsets along the way. But this game is going to define how both of these two team seasons go for this year. But Billy Napier has more to prove in this game than Mario Cristobal. I'm getting really annoyed with people just overlooking Mario Cristobal's accomplishments when Billy Napier hasn't done shit compared to Mario Cristobal at a Power 4 level. I think it's really ignorant And it just makes you sound like a casual fan to make it seem like Billy Napier has done more or he's on the same level as Mario Cristobal when he doesn't even have a bowl win yet at Florida. He doesn't even have a winning season at Florida yet. Shout out to everybody in the comment section. Shout out to my guy Florida Trucker, my guy Jamie Carlo, my guy Immortal Black TV. He says the Canes should take the ACC this year. Florida Trucker says stop being an emotional homer. Florida Trucker, this is what you have to understand about me. You can't call me a homer when I'm the same person last year that picked Florida State to beat Miami and to win the ACC last year. If Miami was going to lose this game, I would pick Miami to lose this game. I bet money on this. You know, I kind of make my living off betting during the football season, so I don't have time to be wasting and throwing away money being overly emotionally invested into these teams. Mario Cristobal has done more throughout his tenure being a head coach at Miami and Oregon than what Billy Napier has. Billy Napier didn't even make it to a bowl game last year. They lost to Arkansas, for crying out loud. I mean, let's stop making it seem like Mario Cristobal and Billy Napier are on the same level when Cristobal has done more than what Billy has. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in on Instagram, well, on X and YouTube. If you haven't already, smash that like button so you can give your team good luck for the first week of the 2024 college football season. Make sure that you rate the JT Sports Podcast 5 stars on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. And if you have any questions that you would like answered in the DMs, you can send them on Instagram at JT Sports _ and at X, well, on X at JT Sports __. My guy Florida Trucker is still going crazy. Speak on the last 2 years. Okay, I'll tell you what happened last year. Who had a better record, Miami or Florida? Last time I checked, Miami went bowling. Florida was at home. They couldn't even beat Florida State's JV quarterback. You couldn't even beat Arkansas, the worst team in the SEC, not named you. I mean, let's talk about it. Tell me, Florida Trucker, who had a better season last year? Who won more games, Florida or Miami? Tell me that. Tell me who's done a better job of recruiting, Mario Cristobal or Billy Napier. Last time I checked, Mario Cristobal has brought in 2 back-to-back top 10 classes. Billy Napier is always on the outside looking in of the top 10. I just told you what has transpired the last 2 years. Okay, you talking about your quarterback getting hurt? Our quarterback got hurt. Tyler Van Dyke got hurt. He missed a good chunk of last year. You had your Corey Brown in that quarterback. Like, for all the excuses that you can make for Florida, you can make those same excuses for Miami last year. But the truth is this. One team went bowling and the other team ended their season early. Let's move on. I want to give you guys my best bets for week 1 of the upcoming college football season. All of these games are what I'm going to be putting on my 5-leg parlay this weekend. So if you guys end up utilizing these picks and they end up working out for you, give me a shout out on the gram, on X. If they don't work out for you, it's not like you're losing money by yourself. We're in this together. I wouldn't give you any bets that I wouldn't put my own personal money on myself. I'm going to start off with Alabama. I love them minus 31.5 at home against Western Kentucky. I understand the reluctantness or being reluctant to bet on these big point spreads in week 1, but this is a good chance to take advantage of point spreads this big because the gap between Alabama and Western Kentucky, it's like a landslide. And with them playing in Tuscaloosa, it's hard to see Western Kentucky's offense doing too much. And this is the first game of the Kalen DeBoer era at Bama. And with the kind of offense that Kalen DeBoer runs, It's perfectly tailored towards Jalen Milroe's strength, which is throwing the football very well, deep, outside of the numbers. Alabama is loaded at wide receiver. They're going to have the best offensive line that they've had in the last 4 to 5 years. I feel confident that Alabama covers this spread by halftime, and they should win this game pretty much by like 7 or 6 touchdowns. I'm taking Alabama to win like 60-7. Maybe Western Kentucky gets a garbage time touchdown with the last couple of minutes in the fourth quarter when Alabama has their third stringers in. But I love Alabama minus 31.5 at home against Western Kentucky. Colorado, I'm taking them minus 10 against North Dakota State at home. This game is going to be played this Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. A few weeks ago, Colorado started out as a touchdown favorite in this game. They were like a 7.5 point favorite. And over the last couple of days, this line has steadily started to rise up a little bit. And now they're a double-digit favorite. There's a good group of people that really believe that North Dakota State is going to pull off the upset. And I'm not ruling that out. But Colorado is a way better team this year than what they were last year. And that's being too overlooked or too commonly overlooked when people talk about this game. And North Dakota State is not the powerhouse that they used to be. You know, their rival, South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits, they've now started to cement themselves as a powerhouse at the FCS level. With the talent that Dion has brought in from the portal, improving the offensive line, overhauling the defense, especially the D-line, Colorado offensively should be able to outscore North Dakota State with ease. Even if North Dakota State is able to hang around with Colorado for the first half, eventually Colorado is going to pull away because I don't see North Dakota State's defense being able to slow down Shedeur Sanders in that passing attack because North Dakota State doesn't have the depth at corner needed to slow down how deep Colorado is at wide receiver. They're like 5-6 guys deep, and I trust Colorado with their new defensive coordinator to get a couple of stops or two in this game to make this a 2-possession win for Colorado. So give me Colorado minus 10. I love them to win 45-27. It's my final score prediction for this game. I'm taking Miami minus 2.5 on the road in the swamp. Listen, I've been telling you guys for the last couple of weeks that Florida is not that good of a team as what they look like on paper. Billy Napier is the sole reason why I don't like Florida this year. If you had a better head coach, let's say you had Kalen DeBoer, not only would I take you to win this game, but I would take you to possibly win 7, maybe 8 games potentially, right? And we know that this game is probably going to be close. It's probably going to come down to the last possession, who gets the ball last. I love Miami to at least be able to win by a field goal. And I'm pretty confident that Miami should probably win by a touchdown or so. I don't think this game is going to be a blowout, but I do think that Miami is obviously the more talented team. I believe that they do have the slight coaching advantage as well. And Billy Napier is 2-10 against top 25 teams at Florida. I know Florida has like this crazy home opener win streak, but you know what they say about streaks, they're meant to be broken. And Miami's going to come into the swamp and take care of business. I love them to win outright, and I love them to cover the points as well. Next up, I got Houston minus 2.5 at home against UNLV. This is a tricky game because UNLV, they do return a lot of their production from last year's squad, and they were pretty good in 2023. They won 9 games, I believe. They lost to Boise State in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. But Houston has a new head coach. They get rid of Dana Holgorsen, and they replace him with Willie Fritz, who has served as the head coach for Tulane for the last couple of years. And it's not like Houston doesn't have any talent at all to be good this year. They do have Donovan Smith back at quarterback. I think that he has the potential to end up being one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12 this year. They got a good group of wide receivers. Their offensive line is a concern. Defensively, you don't know what Houston's going to look like on that side. But even with this potentially being a high-scoring game, I love Houston to still be able to pull out the win because I do think that they do have the slight talent edge over UNLV and Willie Fritz. I trust him in a game like this against Barry Odom. Barry Odom has showed us that he can be a more than capable coach at pulling off these kinds of upsets. When the spread is this small, it's for a reason. And I believe that UNLV beat 2 Power 5 teams last year. They beat Kansas in their bowl game, and they also beat Vanderbilt early last year. And with Houston not really being that great, if you were to compare Houston to the rest of the Power 4 teams out there, they probably would be near the bottom. But I see them having enough to take care of UNLV at home. This isn't going to be a blowout. I'll be surprised if Houston wins this game by more than a touchdown. I expect it to be close. UNLV has a pretty good quarterback that they got from Holy Cross. So this is going to be a back and forth game, but Houston should be able to pull it out and sneak out that 2.5 points. They should cover that. So I love UNLV to lose. 48-42 is going to be my final score prediction. And lastly, I'm taking Boston College plus 15.5 against Florida State. I don't see Boston College winning this game, but I don't see them getting blown out. With the style that Florida State is going to be playing offensively, pretty much prioritizing the run game, being a run-first team, they're not going to be a team that's going to put up a lot of points in bunches unless they just maul you on the ground. Boston College returns a lot of experience from last year, and they got a new head coach in Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien is not no slouch. If you keep up with the NFL, you know that he had some success as the head coach in Houston until he became the GM and pretty much destroyed the team, trading away everybody. But before he became the head coach of the Texans, he saved Penn State football. And I'm about to get into a dark subject, but after the whole Jerry Sandusky incident, I mean, it looked like Penn State was never going to be a good football program again. And the reason why they're in the situation that they're in right now under James Franklin is thanks to Bill O'Brien. Too many people think that Penn State is where they're at because of James Franklin, when Bill O'Brien, built the stairs for James Franklin to be able to crawl and be able to walk on them to help Penn State propel themselves to one of the better teams in college football, consistently winning 9-10 games every year. But with them having Thomas Castanello at quarterback, it makes things really interesting for Florida State defensively because they struggled when they had to go up against Haynes King, who is a pretty good dual threat quarterback. And Thomas Castanello, I mean, this dude is really dynamic with the ball in his hands. And Bill O'Brien was the OC during the Bryce Young era at Alabama. Thomas Castanello, he doesn't have the exact same skill set as Bryce Young, but Bill O'Brien is going to learn how to build an offense around this dude's strengths. They got a pretty decent offensive line. And Florida State, with their struggles against the run last week against Georgia Tech, I expect that to continue with you going up against one of college football's most athletically gifted quarterbacks. So I love Florida State to win, but I love Boston College to cover in this game. So these are my college football week 1 best bets. Go ahead, put these on a $5 parlay. I'm pretty confident a lot of these are going to end up hitting. I'm pretty confident all of these are going to end up hitting. I got a pretty good track record when it comes to week 1 of the college football season. Over the last couple of years, I've always gone 5-0. And I love these slate of games. There aren't too many underdogs that I love this week, but I do love Boston College with the fact that they kind of have an offense A little bit similar to what Georgia Tech has in terms of having a super dynamic dual threat quarterback, a capable running back, and you return a lot of production from last year. Now, I want to move on to the NFL side of things. Let me get a sip of water real quick and make sure my lips ain't chapped. Shout out to everybody in the comment section. My guy Florida Trucker says, you're snorting cane. My guy Armando Black TV says, Houston by a touchdown. My guy Kim Malik says, cap. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we go live. Now, you guys already know that I'm picking the Carolina Panthers to win the NFC South this year. A lot of y'all think that I'm doing crack, I'm on drugs, but I trust Carolina more than I trust the Atlanta Falcons to win the South based off Dave Canales being the head coach. He's never been a head coach before, but everywhere he's been as the offensive coordinator, he's been responsible for two of the NFL's biggest comeback stories. He resurrected Geno Smith's career in Seattle, and he did the same thing last season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers working with Baker Mayfield. So there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to help Bryce Young live up to his potential. He was the #1 overall pick for a reason. Raheem Morris, this is his second go around being a head coach in the NFL. And when you think about second chance head coaches in the NFL, most of them, especially the defensive minded ones, don't pan out all that well. Think about Dennis Allen right now with the New Orleans Saints. Yeah, they went 9-8 last year, but they were 2-6 against teams that had winning records. Think about who else? Think about Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles has had a small amount of success with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he's yet to win double-digit games there. So when I think about Raheem Morris getting his second opportunity, being a second chance head coach, he has a lot to prove this year. He has a lot of pressure on him to lead this team to the playoffs because the Falcons do have a playoff caliber team, but there's just something weird about Atlanta that just makes them too good to be true in a sense. You got Kirk Cousins, who's coming off this Achilles injury. He's up there in age. And you got Michael Penix, who you drafted 8th overall. And I really think that Michael Penix being on the team makes things a little bit awkward in terms of their quarterback situation, because if Kirk Cousins struggles for the first couple of weeks to start this year, fans are quickly going to start chanting for Michael Penix, and guys in the locker room have spent the majority of their time on the field practicing and working with Michael Penix being the quarterback. So I do think that the leash for Kirk Cousins is fairly thin. And although the Falcons have made some really good personnel decisions, signing Justin Simmons, pairing him along with Jesse Bates, you know, some of their draft picks have a lot to prove this year. I look at the Carolina Panthers, and I know that Dave Canales, with the job that he's done with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, that this offense is going to at least be solid this year. They're not going to be elite. They're not going to be great, but this is going to be a solid offense that the Panthers are going to have this year. They're going to be good on the interior of their offensive line, which was their biggest weakness on their O-line last year. You still got two pretty capable offensive tackles and Taylor Morton and Akim Ekwonu, with you adding Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette at receiver. You got a way better group of wideouts for Bryce Young to throw the football to this year than what you did last year. And defensively, they are lacking talent on that side of the ball. But you have Ejaro Evero, who's one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. Atlanta has the talent advantage over Carolina, but I believe this is going to be one of those situations where you have a team that, although they're more talented, they end up underachieving just because of the weirdness of the Atlanta Falcons organization. It seems like everything looks good right now, but I just have a bad feeling about Atlanta. I don't think they're going to be bad, but I don't see them winning 10 games this year. I got them at 9-8. I got Carolina going 10-7. Carolina has a pretty manageable schedule. I can see them sweeping New Orleans and splitting with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and splitting with the Atlanta Falcons, with them getting high-level quarterback play out of Bryce Young this year. And with Dave Canales, there's a lot of uncertainty with him because this is his first time ever being a head coach, which may sound, weird to the Falcons fans start listening to this, because you're saying, JT, like, how do you have more trust in a guy who's never been a head coach before than you do in Raheem Morris, who's been a head coach before? He's had a winning season. But my thing with Raheem Morris is that he's a defensive-minded coach. And his defense with the Rams was pretty good, but it wasn't setting the league on fire. It's not like they had a top 5 defense. It's not like they had an elite defense last year. They overachieved. And he also didn't really have that good of a defense when he was coaching for the Buccaneers. And a lot of these second chance head coaches don't end up panning out, especially when they specialize on the defensive end of things. And that's why I have more skepticism about Raheem Morris, just based off the track record that they don't have consistency when anytime they get a second head coaching opportunity, being able to take advantage of it and learn from their mistakes. I think for the Falcons this year, you are going to be in for a couple of games that you should win that you end up losing. And you're going to end up going against a Panthers team that, with Dave Canales at the helm as their head coach, I love him to help Bryce Young live up to his potential. And if Bryce Young ends up living up to his potential, he easily should become the best quarterback in the NFC South, which is why I give the advantage more to Carolina than I do the Atlanta Falcons, because you are going to have Bryce Young playing at a top, 12 level, which is where most people expected him to play at when he first got drafted. There are a lot of similarities that Bryce Young has to Tua Tagovailoa, those with really good anticipation, has really good accuracy. And the Falcons have, some concerns with how their schedule is. On the outside looking in, you look at the Falcons schedule and it looks pretty easy, but they do have some tough games. They got to open their season up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That definitely is a game that they could lose, and they got to play the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. That is a really tough 3 games to open this season with. Meanwhile, you look at the Carolina Panthers. Their first couple of games are a cakewalk compared to Atlanta's. So week 1, they're playing the Los Angeles Chargers. Well, they're playing the New Orleans Saints. That's a winnable game. The Saints aren't going to be that good this year. The Chargers, that game could go either way. And then you got to play the Raiders. So you're facing off against 2 teams that didn't qualify for the playoffs last year. Compared to Atlanta, they're going up against 3 playoff teams: the Steelers, the Eagles, and the Chiefs. So with how manageable Carolina's schedule is compared to Atlanta's, I love the Panthers to be able to win this division over the Atlanta Falcons. I have more faith in Dave Canales that he's going to work out than Raheem Morris. I don't think Raheem Morris is going to crash and burn, but I see Dave Canales being the better of the 2 new head coaches, with Dave Canales being able to be better at getting the most out of his quarterbacks. And with the Carolina Panthers, I just think that, there's more to be confident with them than there is the Atlanta Falcons, because the only thing that hurts me when it comes to having faith in Carolina is their owner is a doofus. This dude is a Looney Tunes. He's throwing water on fans. The Atlanta Falcons, on the other hand, it seems like every time they take 2 steps forward, they take 3 steps backwards. They got Justin Simmons, they traded for Matthew Judon, but then they elect not to start Michael Penix for the remainder of the preseason. Something about Atlanta just doesn't seem right with me. It just seems too good to be true. I don't think they're going to be bad. I got them winning 9 games. I just got Carolina winning 10. I just have a great feeling about the aura that Dave Canales has brought to that Carolina Panthers franchise as opposed to Raheem Morris. It's one of those things that it sounds good right now, but once the games get played and we get into week 4 of the regular season, Atlanta possibly could be 1-3. Maybe they end up splitting those games and they can beat Pittsburgh, beat Philadelphia, beat Kansas City in upset fashion. But, their first 3 games are going to define how their season goes. And with Carolina having an easier start to the season, that's going to help them get out to a faster start than Atlanta. So I trust Carolina more than I trust the Falcons to win the NFC South. How good are the Jacksonville Jaguars going to be this year? Let's talk about it, because last year around this time, they were everybody's dark horse Super Bowl pick. And they started out fast. For the first half of the regular season, they were in control to lock up the 1 seed in the AFC South. But once they got into the second half of last year, Trevor Lawrence got banged up against the 49ers, and that's when things just went haywire for them. So you go into the 2024 NFL season, and there's a lot to feel good about with Jacksonville. You got a new defensive coordinator and Liam Nelson, who did a fantastic job with Atlanta's defense last year. And Jacksonville's defense should be a lot better at generating a more consistent pass rush. Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen both could be guys who have over 14.5 sacks this year. You also signed a really good interior defensive lineman in free agency from the San Francisco 49ers. His name is escaping me right now, but it's going to come to me eventually. And I love the depth that they have in their secondary this year as opposed to last year. And offensively, if your offensive line can play at an average level, I feel good about Jacksonville's chances of being able to have the NFL's or one of the NFL's most explosive passing attacks this year. Trevor Lawrence, when he's healthy, we know that he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He's a top 10 quarterback at his best. And you give him Brian Thomas Jr., who they selected in the first round out of LSU. This is a rookie wideout that isn't getting enough attention. If you're looking for a sleeper wideout to draft in your fantasy football leagues, look no further than Brian Thomas Jr. This is a fantastic wideout when it comes to winning those one-on-one 50-50 ball matchups downfield. He's going to be a good red zone target. And for a guy of his size, he moves pretty well with the ball in his hands after the catch. You got Travis Etienne, one of the better all-around running backs in the league. What slowed down Jacksonville's offense at times is that their rushing attack wasn't as effective as what it should be when you have a back that has the talent of Etienne. And at wide receiver, you got Gabe Davis, who I know he's not the most flashiest guy. He's known for being more inconsistent than not. But I love the big playability that you get with him. And with him and Brian Thomas Jr. being your two outside receivers, I think that you're going to be very good at throwing the ball outside of the numbers than what you were last year, because Calvin Ridley just wasn't a good fit for Doug Peterson's offense. And for Doug Peterson, I'm expecting him to take back over the play calling because Press Taylor isn't it. And if Doug Peterson takes back the play calling duties, I love this offense ability to be able to live up to the potential that they have, because this should be a top 12 offense, a top 15 offense at worst. And if Trevor Lawrence can be better at taking care of the football, I love Jacksonville being able to at least win 10 games this year and at least making it to the divisional round. I don't think they are as good as what the Houston Texans are. The Houston Texans are just a different animal this year. But the Jaguars are one of those teams that I feel have quietly been written off due to them having so high of expectations going into last year and them failing to live up to them, that people kind of have soured over them. but there still is enough talent on this team to make it to the playoffs. You got Trevor Lawrence, who's tied for being the highest paid quarterback in the league. They believe in this brother, and I do too. Trevor Lawrence is the best thing that happened to Jacksonville in a very long time. And as long as they can keep him upright, they can keep him healthy with the improved defense, I'm pretty confident that Jacksonville ends up being a playoff team this year. We don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback of the Steelers this year, but if Mike Tomlin rolls with Russell Wilson as QB1, things are going to get really ugly very quickly for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And for some reason, despite Russell Wilson still being a good quarterback, Denver was willing to take the NFL's largest cap hit in league history to get rid of him. And if you're a good quarterback, you don't get cut for that big of a cap hit if you still are serviceable. Russell Wilson, I don't give a damn about what the stats say. The stats are a lie. I remember there was a year when Blake Bortles threw for 40 touchdowns in the season. Statistically, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league that year. But if you watch the game, you would know that the majority of Blake Bortles' 40 touchdowns that year came in the fourth quarter in garbage time when they were down multiple possessions. The same thing happened with Russell Wilson last year. A lot of his touchdowns came in the fourth quarter when they were down by several touchdowns because he played so terrible throughout the first three quarters. And we got to stop making Russell Wilson out to be a victim in Denver. Because when he got traded from Seattle to the Broncos, he was supposed to be the fix to the long-time quarterback woes. He was supposed to make Denver a Super Bowl contender again. But instead, he ended up being a massive disappointment. It wasn't all his fault because Nathaniel Hackett was an awful head coach, but a good quarterback is supposed to elevate his team. People keep saying Russell Wilson didn't have this. He didn't have that. He didn't have a good offensive line. Denver had a pretty good offensive line. It's just that you wouldn't have been able to tell that because of the amount of sacks that Russell Wilson took, holding on to the football too long, trying to be Houdini with the football, which he doesn't have the ability to be anymore because he's getting old, he's regressing, and his athleticism is diminishing. And I've seen way too many Steelers fans come at me in my DMs in the comment section saying that you got to ignore what happened in Denver. Denver was an outlier, so ignore Father Time catching up to Russ. If you watched Russell Wilson in the two preseason games that he played in this year, he looked old and sluggish. At this point, I don't even call him Russ anymore. I call him Grandpa Russell. And if the Steelers are going to have a young offensive line that's going to be heavily inconsistent, you do yourself a disservice throwing a guy back there that doesn't have the ability to evade pressure. And he also isn't that better of a passer than what Justin Fields is. Russell Wilson was in the middle of the pack when it came to throwing in the middle of the field last year. He is petrified to throw in the middle of the field, and he's scared to push the football downfield despite being known for being one of the most accurate deep ball throwers in the past decade in the league. And everything that has made Russell Wilson one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL over the past decade has now starting to gone away. You want to know why? Because he's getting old, he's regressing. He doesn't have the ability to maintain the same playing style that's given him this reputation because he can't evade sacks anymore. Everybody talks about Russell Wilson and his preseason performance having to deal with bad offensive line play. This dude was dealing with bad offensive line play for the majority of his prime years in Seattle. That's what made him so great. He was able to overcome bad offensive lines because he could wiggle out of sacks. He could make defensive linemen look foolish. He can't do that anymore. He can only beat you from within the pocket. And he can't do that due to him being undersized, not being able to see in the middle of the field, and all he throws is checkdowns. You know who Russell Wilson reminds me of in the black and gold? Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett didn't take a lot of shots downfield. He threw a lot of checkdowns, and you saw where that got the Steelers offense last year. Absolutely nowhere. By starting Russell Wilson, you keep repeating the same mistake that you've made with your last couple of quarterbacks, with you having quarterbacks that just want to be check down Charlies and don't want to take shots downfield. And it's really disappointing that the Steelers continue to roll with these kinds of quarterbacks that don't want to throw the football deep when you have one of the NFL's best deep threats in George Pickens. Could you imagine the kind of numbers George Pickens would put up if he had a quarterback like Jordan Love or CJ Stroud throwing him the football? Justin Fields gives the Steelers the best chance to have success this year because, for one, he's a way better athlete at this point in his career than what Russell Wilson is. He's going to be able to overcome having inconsistent offensive line play. Two, he's, believe it or not, one of the NFL's best deep ball throwers. He was one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league and passes 20 yards or more last year. With George Pickens being a really good contested catch, 50-50 ball wide receiver, him and Justin Fields are going to have a really good connection with each other. And I just think that at this point, you are better off rolling with Justin Fields for the entirety of this season than you are Russell Wilson. You see, the only advantage that Russ gives you over Justin Fields is that he takes care of the football. But Kenny Pickett took care of the football. He didn't have too many turnovers. I'd rather have a quarterback that may have a couple of turnovers here and there, but he gives my offense more explosiveness because he's going to be more aggressive and pushing the football downfield. You also have those games that when everything goes right for Justin Fields, he can carry your team to a win. I mean, let's not forget how good he played against the Atlanta Falcons and the Detroit Lions in games in the past. You know, there were games when Dan Campbell just said Justin Fields was freaking unstoppable. You know, when Justin Fields has those games when he just explodes and he's terrorizing you through the air and he's dominating you on the ground, the Steelers will be a really tough team to beat this year because you know how good their defense is going to be. I don't care about his turnover issues. You got a defense that is good enough to overcome that. But you're putting your defense at a disadvantage when you're going to have the same quarterback back there that you've had the last 2-3 years. Russell Wilson is not that big of an upgrade from Kenny Pickett because at this point of his career, he plays the quarterback position the same way Kenny Pickett does. He's scared to throw the football deep. He only wants to throw 5- and 6-yard checkdowns. And that's the same thing KP used to do. And that didn't get the Steelers offense nowhere, but going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out every damn possession. Are you Steelers fans tired of mediocrity at quarterback? Like, why are so many people so delusional about Russell Wilson that they can't accept the fact that he's 35 years old, he's regressing, he's a diminishing asset? Please get over this vision of your head of Seattle Seahawks Russell Wilson. Those days are long and gone. This dude is cooked. If he was still a good quarterback, the Broncos wouldn't have took the NFL's largest cap hit in league history to get rid of him. You can't justify that. The logic that Steeler fans are using to justify having hope and optimism that Russ is going to be the guy to lead Mike Tomlin to once again another winning season is really stupid to me. I can't wrap my head around it. You don't cut a good quarterback for that big of a cap hit. Do you know how hard it is for Denver to recover from that? They're like $80 million in dead cap. They can't even sign nobody else this season. You know, and I don't even know how they're going to be able to recover from this big of a dead cap hit next year. But they felt like Russell Wilson was so bad that they had to get rid of him. And you're trying to blame Sean Payton when Bo Nix has been balling out in the preseason. This is also the same head coach that was winning games with Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, Trevor Siemian, Teddy Bridgewater. And we really are going to try to make Russell Wilson out to be the victim? I have nothing against Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is a big part of my childhood, but I'm not somebody who gets over-attached to players to the point that I ignore when they are obviously regressing. You can't play football at an elite level forever. Eventually, Father Time comes knocking on the door, and he comes to collect. It happened to Tom Brady. It happened to Peyton Manning. What makes Russell Wilson so great that he can overrun Father Time? Russell Wilson is washed. He's cooked. He's not good anymore. And if you are a Steelers fan, believing that Russ is going to be able to rewind the clock back to 2015 and 2016, you are delusional. Your justification is, well, he's better than what we've had. What you've had has been bare minimum. Probably worse than that. You're trying to compare shit to crap. And there isn't a difference. No matter what, the Steelers still have the worst quarterback room in the AFC North. You still are going to have a tough time being able to beat the Ravens and Joe Burrow twice. You beat the Bengals twice last year with Jake Browning. Joe Burrow fully healthy, they're going to mop the floor with the Steelers. You barely beat the Ravens JV team. People love to talk about how Mike Tomlin swept the Bengals and the Ravens last year, but they leave out how you didn't play Lamar Jackson in the second game. You played Tyler Huntley. You barely won that game. It was quite embarrassing to watch, as a matter of fact. I mean, this is the same team that lost to two of the NFL's worst teams in back-to-back weeks, the New England Patriots and the Arizona Cardinals. I don't get how people can be this delusional about a guy who has obviously regressed. He's not good anymore. He's playing on a veteran minimum contract, for crying out loud, people. Justin Fields gives the Steelers the best chance to win this year. I really would love for Steeler fans to stop being so attached to just mediocrity. When has our level of expectations fallen this far? We went from Big Ben, a future first ballot Hall of Famer, to Kenny Small Hands Pickett, to Mason Rudolph, to Mitchell Trubisky, to now old Grandpa Russell Wilson. Please, Mike Tomlin, if you're listening to this right now, which I doubt you are, but just in case you are, please do the right thing. Start Justin Fields. He gives you more upside with his ability to throw the football deep downfield with accuracy. He's a really good runner with the ball in his hands, and with how dynamic of a runner Justin Fields is, he automatically is going to guarantee that you're going to have an elite rushing attack. Najee and Jaylen Warren in the same backfield with Justin Fields, I don't think too many defensive coordinators are going to want a game plan for that. It's hard to game plan for Justin Fields when you have games when everything's going right, he's taking care of the football. This offense can be hard to stop. But when everything's going right for Russell Wilson, you're still not really getting nowhere because all he does is throw checkdowns. I just wish that people would wake up about Russell Wilson. Stop being attached to nostalgia. Stop judging people for what they used to be and judge people for what they are now. And what you see in front of you is an old, aging, and diminishing asset that is Russell Wilson. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before I get up on out of here, I want to give you guys my thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals going into this season. This was a team that overachieved relative to expectations year one under Jonathan Gannon. You know, they had an upset over the Dallas Cowboys, which was pretty big, and they were winning a good amount of games, or they were competitive in a good amount of games when they had Joshua Dobbs at quarterback. But when Kyler Murray came back and he was fully healthy, this offense was completely different with him back in the fold. And this year, if Arizona is going to look to make a playoff run, you're going to need Kyler Murray to go in his closet and put on that Superman cape, because he's going to have to play at an elite level if Arizona wants to have a shot at being able to not only be competitive in the NFC West, but to also have an outside shot of maybe locking up that 7th or 6th seed in the NFC, because Kyler Murray has a great group of wide receivers. You're going to be throwing the Marvin Harrison Jr., and there's a couple of other guys on that roster that I really like a lot. And you have a capable running back core. You got Trey Benson, a rookie that you drafted in this past year's draft. You got James Conner, who's been one of the NFL's most productive backs over the last couple of years. And Kyler Murray, to me, has went from overrated to quietly becoming underrated. If he ends up having a high-level productive season for Arizona, I think that this could be an 8, potentially 9-win team, because Arizona, to win games this year, they're going to have to outscore everybody because their defense looks absolutely terrible. I mean, I have concerns about their pass rush. Their linebacker unit, according to Pro Football Focus, was graded as one of the worst in the NFL. Their secondary, I got a challenge for you guys. Name me 2 Arizona players in that secondary, not named Budda Baker being one of them. You probably can't. This defense is not going to be that good this year. And Arizona, for them to be able to win, they got to outscore pretty much everybody they play, which they have the ability to do if Kyler Murray turns into Superman this year. If he ends up playing at a Pro Bowl caliber level and he picks up from where he left off last year, Arizona with Marvin Harrison Jr., you got that really good tight end. What's his name? Trey McBride, I believe his name is. You know, you got some pretty good weapons on this offense. But he's going to be running around for his life this season. That offensive line, outside of Paris Johnson, is a huge concern. I mean, you signed Jonah Williams in free agency to play right tackle for you. Did you not see how bad he was for the Cincinnati Bengals? I mean, for crying out loud, Arizona. There were so many other right tackles that you could have got in free agency and in the NFL draft, and you choose to settle with Jonah Williams? I mean, come on. I love Arizona's offense this year. I think that they got a pretty good offensive coordinator as well, and they should easily be able to score at least 24 plus in the majority of games that they play in. But their defense, you know, could be bad enough where they're dropping 28 a game on them if you're the opposing offense. And I don't have a lot of faith in Jonathan Gannon as a defensive-minded head coach. As a matter of fact, I don't even look at him as a defensive-minded head coach. I look at Jonathan Gannon as a good motivator. You know, he's somebody that players like, they respect, they play hard for him. But defensively, I didn't really see too much out of Arizona last year that had me that impressed. But this was a team that was able to win games that they had no business being able to win. And they were competitive in a lot of their contests. So if Kyler Murray can end up playing like Superman this year, this could be a playoff team. But if you don't get high-level quarterback play out of him, you're going to be hard-pressed to find too many wins on Arizona's schedule, because that division is going to be absolutely brutal with the arrival of Mike McDonald, and Seattle's going to have a great defense this year. And their offense should be good enough to get the job done. So if you're Arizona, you could have some really ugly losses if your offense doesn't show up in a lot of your games. I think this is going to be an offensive-centric team, and when their offense doesn't produce, oftentimes it's going to result in them taking L's. So that's my thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals this season. And this is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to my guy, Jamie Carlo. He says JT Steelers know that. Bro only signed him for a 1-year contract. The Falcons have 2 of the best safeties in the game. My guy King Malik says Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons, you don't trust the Falcons with A.J. Terrell. I mean, A.J. Terrell wasn't all that great last year. You know, he's not an elite corner. He's not better than Jalen Ramsey or Jair Alexander. I mean, I could name you about 5 cornerbacks right now that I would take over A.J. Terrell if we had some more time. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I will see you guys shortly with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. Don't leave out of here without giving us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify if you enjoy this episode. Share it with your friends, family members, and acquaintances. Send me some questions. Instagram at JTSports_ or on X at JTSports_. And you don't just have to send me questions. Like, if you see like a news article or something that you want me to talk about, then, you can send that in the DM too. It's just, if you got anything that you would want me to talk about, send them in the DMs on Instagram.